Every year, my family forgot to invite me to Christmas. I would sit alone in my small apartment, hearing laughter over the phone, watching my parents and siblings celebrate without me. It wasn't just the parties. They would casually exclude me from all the little traditions, the family dinners, the decorating, as if I didn't exist. But this year, I decided I wouldn't be forgotten. I'm Clara, 32, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the one overlooked. My parents, Harold and Janine, always seemed to favor my younger siblings, Luke, 28, and Maris, 26, as if I was invisible in our own home. Their dismissive comments and forgotten invitations wore on me every holiday, leaving me feeling hurt and insignificant. I tried to shrug it off, but year after year, the sting only grew. This year, I wanted something different. I worked hard at my job, finally earning a promotion that I had fought for over years of dedication. I saved diligently, cutting out unnecessary expenses and investing wisely, all with a goal I rarely admitted aloud. That goal was freedom from being forgotten and overlooked. After years of scrimping and planning, I bought a small mountain house. It wasn't just a house, it was my sanctuary, a place where I could finally feel seen and appreciated, if not by them, then by myself. Before we dive into it, tell me in the comments where you're from. I love seeing the different places people tune in from. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. I spent days decorating the house, hanging lights, and preparing for a quiet, joyful Christmas on my own terms. No more waiting for a call or an invitation that never came. I realized the real power wasn't in their acknowledgement. It was in creating a life where I could be happy without needing their approval. For the first time, I felt a flicker of pride instead of pain, knowing that this Christmas, I would celebrate myself. This year, I wouldn't just be a forgotten guest. I would be the host of my own happiness, and nothing could take that away from me. For as long as I can remember, Christmas always felt like a reminder that I didn't belong in my own family. Every year, while Luke and Maris excitedly talked about plans and gatherings, I was left out. Sometimes it wasn't even a direct exclusion. They would casually say things like, "You probably have your own plans, Clara," or, "We didn't want to bother you if you were busy." It always sounded polite, but it cut deeper than any insult. Over time, I stopped expecting an invitation, stopped asking, and started pretending it didn't bother me. Still, the loneliness was there, quietly gnawing at me. I remember one year when I baked a cake for the family, hoping to bring a little warmth into the holiday, and they barely noticed. They took it as a simple gesture, nothing more, and didn't even thank me properly. Another year, they had a big dinner while I sat at home, convincing myself I could enjoy a quiet night with a movie and some snacks. But the disappointment was sharp. I wondered what I had done wrong or if I was just not enough for them. Each year, the feeling of being invisible grew, and the hurt became something I carried like a weight in my chest. It wasn't just missing the parties. It was the little signs that I didn't matter. The lack of phone calls, the way my parents would laugh at Luke and Maris's stories, but give me only a passing glance. I started noticing how subtle it all was, the way I was never included in the photos, the way no one ever asked for my opinion on plans. It wasn't something I could confront easily because it was never blatant. Still, it left me questioning my worth and whether I truly deserved a place in this family's joy. The pain eventually turned into something different, though. I began imagining a life where I wasn't overlooked, a life where I didn't rely on their approval to feel valued. I pictured myself in a warm, bright home of my own, hosting people who appreciated me, where I could control the atmosphere and the celebration. I even imagined the day they might come across my life and realize just how much they had underestimated me. Not in anger, but in quiet, undeniable success, the kind that makes people take notice without you ever needing to announce it. These thoughts became more than fantasies. They were the beginning of a plan, a vision of independence and achievement that I could reach on my own. I started saving more intentionally, paying attention to opportunities, and thinking about the kind of life I wanted, separate from the shadows of my family. The betrayal I felt wasn't just about being left out. It was about realizing that people you should be able to count on could make you feel small, year after year. That pain fueled something in me, a determination to create my own happiness, a life where I was celebrated rather than forgotten. It was in those quiet moments, feeling the sting of exclusion, that I realized revenge wasn't about confrontation or embarrassment. The real satisfaction would come from building a life so full and complete that they couldn't ignore it, a life that would quietly prove that I was worth more than their neglect. And from that understanding, I started to reshape my future, step by step, fueled by the hurt and the hope of what could be. After years of feeling invisible in my family, I started focusing on myself in ways I hadn't before. I threw myself into my work, determined to prove my own worth without needing anyone's approval. Slowly, my efforts began to pay off. I received recognition at my job, got promoted, and finally felt that the long hours and sacrifices were starting to mean something. It wasn't about showing off. It was about finally being in control of my life, about creating a sense of accomplishment I could own completely. With my growing confidence came careful planning. I saved money diligently, cut unnecessary expenses, and invested wisely, always keeping my eyes on a goal that had nothing to do with anyone else. I wanted security and independence, a place that felt entirely mine, a space where I could be happy on my own terms. After years of working and saving, I finally bought a small mountain house. It wasn't just a property. It was my escape, a sanctuary where the past couldn't follow me. Each room, each corner, represented freedom and the life I had built from scratch. The mountain house became more than just a home. It was a symbol of what I had achieved. Standing on the balcony and looking out over the snow-dusted peaks, I felt a sense of calm I had never known. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone else's acknowledgement or permission to enjoy life. The house reminded me that I could create my own happiness, and that my worth didn't depend on whether my family noticed or included me. As Christmas approached, I realized this year would be different. I didn't need their approval or an invitation. I had everything I needed to celebrate joyfully on my own terms. I started preparing for the holiday quietly but with purpose, imagining the warmth, lights, and decorations filling my new home. I wanted a Christmas filled with comfort and beauty, a reflection of my efforts and independence. There was a certain satisfaction in knowing that this time, I could take control of the day completely, without compromise or apology. The sense of empowerment grew with every little decision I made. Choosing the decorations, picking out the perfect tree, arranging the rooms just the way I liked. It was all mine to create. For the first time, I could focus entirely on what brought me joy rather than worrying about being overlooked or forgotten. Each small choice reinforced that I didn't have to wait for anyone to acknowledge me to feel important. In that quiet preparation, I discovered a new strength within myself. I realized that happiness didn't come from others. It came from claiming what I deserved and building it with my own hands. The mountain house wasn't just a house, it was a statement. It was proof that I had risen above the neglect, that I had transformed hurt into determination, and that this Christmas, I would finally celebrate life on my own terms, fully and unapologetically. By the time I had settled into my mountain house, I thought I could enjoy some peace, but I soon realized my family still had a way of sneaking into my thoughts. Luke and Maris somehow caught wind of my new place. I'm not sure if it was through a forwarded mail, a casual mention in conversation, or someone in the neighborhood gossiping, but they knew. A few days later, during a family dinner, they couldn't help but make sly remarks. Luke smirked and said, "So, Clara's building another little cabin somewhere? Must be nice to have endless projects." Maris laughed along, adding, "I hope it's warm enough for you this year." The tone was light, casual, but the sting hit me hard. Even when I was successful, even when I had finally done something entirely for myself, they still found a way to minimize it. It wasn't just about teasing. It was about reminding me that, in their eyes, my achievements didn't matter. They had a way of turning anything I did into something trivial, as if my efforts were invisible or unimportant. For a moment, I felt the familiar ache of being overlooked, the same one I had carried through so many Christmases. But this time, I didn't feel small for long. Instead, I let the feeling settle and watched carefully, realizing how much control they assumed they still had over my emotions. They didn't know that this year, I had planned something completely different. I wasn't going to sit quietly while they mocked or dismissed me. The tiny spark of anger that had been building over years of exclusion now turned into determination. I thought about the holidays past, all the times I had been left out, and I allowed myself a quiet smile at the thought that the roles could finally be reversed. I began imagining a Christmas where I was in charge, where I could set the scene and welcome only the people who truly appreciated me. I pictured my house filled with warmth, lights, and laughter, with my family left to realize what they had missed out on. Instead of being invisible, I would be the one holding the space, the one whose presence mattered. The thought felt thrilling, almost like a long-awaited moment of poetic justice. In the days that followed, I started preparing with a careful mind. I arranged the house to be welcoming but impressive, each detail reflecting the life I had built on my own terms. I chose decorations that were elegant but understated, creating a sense of comfort and pride. I wanted my family to see what they had ignored for years, but I wanted it to be quiet, subtle, and undeniable. There would be no shouting, no confrontation, just a gentle reversal of roles, letting them witness my independence and success firsthand. Every plan I made strengthened the sense that this Christmas would finally belong to me. Instead of waiting for their approval or permission, I would take control of the day completely. The more I thought about it, the more satisfying it became to imagine them walking into my world and seeing the result of my years of hard work. Their mockery would fade in the face of something real, something I had created entirely for myself. This Christmas wouldn't be about being invited. It would be about owning my space and my happiness, and finally showing them that ignoring me had consequences they hadn't even imagined. The weeks before Christmas, I threw myself into preparing my mountain house like never before. I wanted everything to feel special, warm, and alive, a stark contrast to the cold feeling I'd carried every holiday when my family ignored me. I carefully chose the decorations, stringing lights along the balcony and draping garlands across the fireplace. The scent of fresh pine filled the rooms as I set up a tree in the corner, picking ornaments that felt meaningful rather than expensive. I even added small touches of sparkle to the windows, so the house would glow like a beacon in the quiet winter night. I didn't invite my family. Instead, I focused on people who genuinely cared for me, neighbors I had come to know over the past year, friends who appreciated my company, and a few colleagues who had become like a second family. I wanted a space where laughter could echo freely, where conversations weren't overshadowed by reminders that I didn't belong. I worked tirelessly arranging candles, setting up cozy seating, and even planning a small holiday dinner, imagining everyone gathering around the table with warmth and ease. As I decorated, I kept thinking about all the times I had felt left out. I remembered past Christmas mornings when I sat alone while the rest of my family celebrated, when they never called or thought to include me. Those memories still stung, but I let them fuel my determination to make this year different. This house, with its glowing lights and welcoming spaces, was my statement. It was a way to reclaim joy that had been denied to me for so long. I walked from room to room, imagining the small gatherings, the laughter, the clinking of mugs filled with hot chocolate. I pictured people enjoying the decorations, the warmth, the comfort of being together. For the first time, I realized that the happiness I sought didn't depend on my family's recognition. I could create moments that mattered to me, moments that would leave lasting memories without needing anyone else to validate them. In the quiet of the evenings, I'd stand by the large windows, looking out at the snow falling over the mountains, and let a small smile spread across my face. This house was no longer just a building. It had become a sanctuary. Every ornament, every string of lights, every detail was a symbol of independence, proof that I could take care of myself and still find joy. I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years, a sense of freedom from the weight of exclusion. I realized that this Christmas wouldn't be about waiting for someone to include me or hoping they would remember me. It would be about claiming my own happiness fully and unapologetically. The house, glowing and alive, reflected not just the season but the effort, care, and love I poured into my own life. This time, the joy would be mine completely, and I would celebrate it without hesitation, without compromise, and without waiting for anyone's approval. This Christmas, I finally felt like I belonged, inside my own home, inside my own happiness, and inside the life I had built entirely for myself. A few days before Christmas, I heard that my parents and siblings had caught wind of something. Apparently, someone had mentioned that I was hosting a small gathering at my mountain house. I wasn't sure if it was Luke or Maris who had passed the information along, or if it had spread through a neighbor, but the point was they knew. I expected them to show up eventually, and when they did, I made sure I was prepared, but in my own way. On Christmas Eve, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, Harold and Janine stood there, dressed as if they had come for a casual visit, with Luke and Maris trailing behind. They looked around, trying to appear nonchalant, but I could see the surprise in their eyes. The house was lit up beautifully, the tree sparkling, the rooms warm and inviting. It wasn't just a gathering. It was a celebration that reflected everything I had built for myself. Their casual smiles faltered when they took it all in, realizing immediately that this wasn't just a simple get-together. I welcomed them in with a polite nod, keeping my expression calm and collected. I didn't gush over their arrival, didn't offer special attention, and didn't try to mask the fact that they were uninvited guests in a space I had prepared for people who truly valued me. I showed them the house in a quiet, measured way, walking them through the rooms and letting the decorations speak for themselves. My goal wasn't to shame them, but to maintain control, to let them see the life I had built without needing their approval or involvement. They tried to make small talk, glancing around as if to gauge my success. Maris commented on the tree, saying, "It's different from what we expected." And Luke added, "Looks like you went all out." I smiled politely, letting their words hang in the air. I didn't offer explanations or excuses, didn't try to impress them further. I simply allowed them to witness what they had ignored for years, letting the quiet impact of my preparations speak louder than anything I could say. Throughout their visit, I kept a subtle distance. I didn't pull them close, didn't make special offers, and didn't guide the conversation toward memories of past holidays. The power of the moment came from the fact that they were guests in my space, observing the fruits of my independence and success, while I remained steady, composed, and in control. Inside, I felt a mix of satisfaction and calm resolve. Seeing their reactions, the surprise, the unease, the subtle attempts to seem at ease, confirmed what I had known all along. This Christmas, I had shifted the balance. I was no longer the one left out, the one overlooked, or the one forgotten. Instead, I was the one setting the stage, defining the experience, and quietly proving that my happiness didn't require their recognition. By the end of the visit, it was clear that the roles had changed. I didn't need to say a word. The house, the warmth, and the thought I had put into every detail conveyed everything they needed to understand. For the first time, they weren't the ones in control. They were simply there, witnessing the life I had carefully built for myself. I led them through the house slowly, pointing out things I had done over the past year. The furniture was carefully chosen, every piece reflecting a style I liked, not what anyone else would approve of. I showed them the new kitchen cabinets I had picked out, the cozy reading nook by the fireplace, and even the little garden I had started outside. Each detail was quiet proof of the life I had built on my own. I didn't brag or raise my voice. I simply let the space speak for me. As we walked, I could see the change in their expressions. My parents exchanged awkward glances, Harold fidgeting with his hands while Janine's smile felt forced. Luke and Maris tried to keep the conversation light, making small jokes, but I could tell they were uncomfortable. They hadn't expected this level of independence, this display of effort and success. I had always been underestimated, overlooked, and dismissed, and now the reality of what I had accomplished was impossible to ignore. Their discomfort was unmistakable, and I let it linger, quiet but palpable. At one point, Luke mumbled something about how impressive the house looked, and Maris added a hesitant, "You've really done well, Clara." I nodded politely, acknowledging their words without overreacting or seeking praise. They attempted small apologies, trying to smooth over years of neglect with quick statements like, "We didn't mean to exclude you before," or "We should have been more thoughtful." I didn't need to respond. Their awkwardness and the tone in their voices were enough. The unspoken acknowledgement of their mistakes was far more powerful than any confrontation I could have staged. I watched as they slowly realized that the years of overlooking me had consequences, not in anger, but in the undeniable fact that I had moved forward without them. This wasn't about revenge in the sense of humiliation. It was about the quiet, steady shift of power. They were visitors in my world now, seeing what they had ignored for so long. The balance had reversed. I no longer needed validation from them to feel worthy or accomplished. Throughout the tour, I maintained my calm, letting the house and its details tell the story of my effort, patience, and resilience. The lights, the warmth, and the careful touches I had added emphasized a life built deliberately, with thought and care. I could see the realization sinking in for them. I had succeeded despite their neglect. By the time we finished walking through the house, the atmosphere had changed. My family's attempts at light conversation were strained, and their eyes often flicked toward me, searching for cues or reassurance. I didn't offer any. I simply allowed them to experience the reality of my growth. Their unease, the subtle guilt and admiration in their expressions spoke volumes. In that quiet, understated way, I let them feel the consequences of years of overlooking me, and I felt the satisfaction of justice without a single word of scorn. For the first time, I realized that revenge didn't need to be loud. It could be calm, composed, and absolute, built entirely on the undeniable truth of my success and independence. After the small gathering ended, I asked my parents to step aside with me for a moment. I wanted a private conversation, away from Luke and Maris, a chance to finally say what had been building inside me for years. Standing in the quiet corner of the living room, I looked at them and spoke with calm clarity. "Every year you forgot me," I said, my voice steady. "But I never forgot myself." The words felt heavy in the air, carrying the weight of all the holidays I had been left out, the dinners I had missed, and the traditions I had silently watched from a distance. Harold opened his mouth, then closed it again. For once, he had no words to soften or excuse the neglect. Janine shifted uncomfortably and tried to explain herself. "We didn't mean to hurt you, Clara," she began. "It was never intentional." But I didn't interrupt her, because I didn't need her excuses. I wasn't seeking pity, apologies, or validation. I simply wanted her to hear the truth of what I had felt every year, and to understand that it had mattered deeply to me. As I spoke, I felt a strange mix of relief and empowerment. I wasn't pleading for recognition. I wasn't demanding that they change. I was simply stating the reality that had shaped me. The years of feeling overlooked, the quiet pain of exclusion, and the determination I had developed as a result. My voice didn't waver because I was finally holding the space for myself, finally claiming my own experience as valid and real. For a long moment, they didn't respond. I could see it in their eyes, the realization dawning that their actions or inaction had left a mark far deeper than they had imagined. It wasn't just a forgotten invitation or a missed dinner. It had been years of subtle dismissals, of moments where I felt invisible in my own family, of repeated reminders that I wasn't a priority. And now, facing me in this confident, self-assured form, they had to confront the consequences of their neglect. I didn't raise my voice or gesture dramatically. I didn't need to. The quiet weight of my words and the calm strength in my posture carried more impact than any argument could. I wanted them to feel the truth, not to argue about it, and in that silence, the effect was undeniable. They were no longer just parents. They were witnesses to the strength I had built from the years of feeling forgotten. After a few moments, Janine's eyes softened, and Harold looked away, lost in thought. I knew they were beginning to understand, finally, the effect of their consistent exclusion. I didn't gloat. I didn't demand their admiration. I simply let the truth exist between us. It was enough that I had spoken it, enough that they had to face it, enough that I no longer carried the burden of silence. For the first time, I felt completely in control, not of them, but of my own story. I had stated the truth, and it was enough. Christmas morning arrived, and the house was filled with a warmth I had never felt with my family. The tree glowed softly in the corner. The smell of pine and cinnamon floated through the rooms, and the laughter of people who genuinely cared about me echoed across every space. Friends and neighbors gathered around, bringing food, stories, and smiles. It was chaotic in the best way, joyful, full of energy, and completely mine. I didn't have to compete for attention or worry about being overlooked. For the first time, the celebration felt like it belonged to me entirely. As I watched everyone enjoy themselves, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Each smile, each toast, each shared story reinforced the reality that I had built something meaningful without needing approval from my family. The people around me weren't just polite guests. They were genuinely invested in my happiness. Their presence reminded me that I didn't need anyone's validation to feel worthy or appreciated. I could create joy from my own choices, and it was more fulfilling than I had imagined. Meanwhile, I noticed subtle changes in my family's demeanor. Harold and Janine, Luke and Maris, lingered awkwardly near the edges of the room, unsure how to participate. They weren't uncomfortable because of anything I said or did. They were unsettled because they were witnessing the life I had constructed without them. My laughter, my warmth, my confidence, they had missed all of this for years. I could see it in their faces, the realization that their neglect had cost them the chance to share moments like these. I didn't need to point it out. The truth of my happiness was enough. The mountain house itself seemed to reflect everything I had worked for. Every corner, every decoration, every small detail of comfort and beauty represented independence. It wasn't just a building, it was a haven. The snow-dusted peaks outside reminded me that I had created a space where I could be safe, celebrated, and fully myself. For the first time, Christmas felt like freedom rather than loneliness. I moved through the rooms, greeting friends, arranging food, and enjoying the small moments that I had planned with care. I wasn't rushing to meet expectations or make anyone happy. This celebration was entirely mine, built from my own choices, patience, and determination. It was a quiet triumph, not loud or boastful, but deeply satisfying. By the end of the day, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for years. I had finally prioritized myself, my happiness, and my sense of worth. The people who mattered were with me, the house glowed with warmth and life, and my family had no choice but to acknowledge, silently, the life they had neglected. I didn't need their approval to feel whole. I had everything I wanted: joy, independence, and the knowledge that I could celebrate fully on my own terms. For the first time, I understood what it meant to be truly free. My happiness wasn't tied to anyone else, and this Christmas, I had claimed it entirely for myself. Sitting in the quiet of my mountain house after the guests had left, I finally allowed myself to reflect on everything that had happened over the past year. The memories of being excluded, overlooked, and dismissed by my family no longer brought a sharp ache. They had transformed into motivation. I realized that all the hurt I had carried wasn't wasted. It had pushed me to build a life where I could never be ignored again. The revenge I had quietly envisioned wasn't about embarrassing anyone or forcing them to apologize. It was about creating a life so full and independent that their neglect no longer held power over me. I thought about every Christmas I had spent alone, the quiet evenings when I felt invisible, and the subtle ways my parents and siblings had reminded me that I didn't belong. Those experiences had shaped me, teaching me resilience and patience. I had taken the pain and turned it into something tangible: a home, a sense of accomplishment, and a life where I could finally celebrate on my own terms. The mountain house wasn't just a property. It was a symbol of my determination and the freedom I had earned through years of effort and self-reliance. Looking around the rooms, I felt a deep sense of pride. Every decoration, every corner of warmth, every detail of comfort reflected the life I had deliberately created. I no longer needed anyone's validation to feel worthy or important. I didn't need my family's recognition to confirm my success or my happiness. For the first time, I understood that empowerment comes not from proving others wrong, but from claiming control over your own life and refusing to let past betrayals dictate your future. I remembered the subtle shifts in my family's expressions during their visit, the awkward glances, the quiet acknowledgement of my achievements, the uneasy attempts at conversation. I didn't respond to their discomfort with anger or confrontation. I simply let them witness the reality of what I had built, a life of independence and strength. That quiet, understated presence of power felt far more satisfying than any dramatic retaliation could have. My revenge wasn't in shaming them. It was in living fully, confidently, and freely. In that moment, I felt a calm sense of clarity. I was stronger than I had realized, smarter in how I approached life, and finally free from the emotional manipulation that had haunted me for years. I had learned that happiness doesn't require permission, and that joy is most fulfilling when it's earned through your own effort. From now on, Christmas, and every celebration, would be mine to define. I would choose the people, the traditions, and the moments that mattered most to me. I had discovered that true power comes from self-respect, from building a life that cannot be ignored or diminished. The house, the warmth, the laughter I had shared with those who valued me, all reminded me that I was finally in control. No matter what, I would always celebrate on my own terms, fully and unapologetically, because I had learned the most important lesson of all. My worth was never determined by anyone else, and my joy would never again be limited by their neglect. Do you think I was right to finally celebrate Christmas on my own and let my family see what they missed, or should I have tried to include them? I'm curious about your thoughts. Share them in the comments.